a good question. When I was in 8th grade and 9th grade at Kennard, we had a teacher named Mr. Jarvie who taught poetry in his class. He taught us, what was that? You know him? Yeah, he taught us Langston Hughes, landlord, my roof has sprung a leak. Don't you remember? I told you about it way last week. He taught us poetry and an appreciation of the beauty of language. And at Hawken, I had a 10th grade poetry teacher, Peter Scott. I think he's still there. And he taught me the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and we learned rhyme and how to do the meter on a poem. And I think it was those classes that really gave me an appreciation of the beauty of language. And then some of it is, my father used to recite Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice. And I picked it up, I guess, from him. And my family, though, I think it's sort of a family trait. We have always used language well and always appreciated language well. I have a younger brother, and sometimes he will say the most wise and insightful things in the most beautiful and eloquent way. So I think it's in the blood, it's in the DNA. And then with that instruction from Mr. Jarvie and from Mr. Scott, you know. There's a book called Sound and Sense about poetry that I used in Mr. Scott's class in 10th grade, and you can still get it. It's like the 99th edition at this point. But it's a great book for learning and understanding the metrics of language.
In your book, you mentioned that at Hawken that kids were prepared to lead compared to your experience at Kenya, where kids were, I guess, focused to be followers. So what would your recommendation be to parents in terms of building leadership skills in their kids and not leaving that responsibility solely on the school system?
Mm-hmm. Very great question. Very great question. I'm not a parent myself, so I don't know how much value I can add there. We need to teach our children to follow their own minds, to be independent thinkers. And we need to teach our children mentorship, positive mentorship, to find a good role model or two whom you can follow. So mentorship, having your own mind, and being a little more courage as a skill. You know, so many of us, so many children are dragged down because they choose bad friends, and they don't have the inner fortitude to say, no, I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to do those things. So I think really active teaching of courage. You're going to need it for the rest of your life in all kinds of situations. Reading, valuing literacy, and cutting the television off. Cutting it off and putting the television in its place. You know, and the telephone. You know, kids are talking a lot these days about nothing. You hear some of these conversations, they wouldn't be taking place if there was no technology, you know. And it's so much time that is squandered just in idle conversation. It's a bad habit to develop. It really is. So I think those 5 are good leadership skills. And I'll leave you with one passage from the Buddhist scriptures. Become the master of your mind rather than let your mind master you. Thank you. That was the last question, right? Oh, there's one more. Let's see. Okay.
I thought we were finished.
Yeah, me too.
I thought maybe it would be helpful if you could comment also. So much of what you've said, and I haven't read your book, is about leaving the hood, the opportunity to go to Hawken and how you could have been more comfortable there. But I wonder about going the other way. I mean, there's in the city neighborhoods. There are strong families, there are wonderful things going on with community development, with block clubs, and so I'm wondering about the Hawken kids getting more involved in learning about the interesting and strong things that are going on in the inner city and reconnecting with the hood. And when you were talking about, economic integration, it was all, city kids going to maybe Avon Lake. So it's a bigger challenge now to think about suburban kids coming and connecting with the city. And so I wondered if you might comment on that.
Thank you. That's a great question. Great question. I should say, I mentioned the program in Raleigh-Durham, the economic integration program there, and it does work both ways. It sends kids out into the suburbs, and it sends suburban kids into the cities. And that's one point. But I think Hawken is probably going to is asking itself that question right now because it's opening a campus at University Circle and seeking to connect with various organizations in the core city so that its students can have more of an urban experience. And there are a lot of good organizations out there. And I think, to be a well-rounded person today, you have to be able to navigate in many different environments comfortably. And so being able to share what we have, the many resources that are in the urban core. We get a bad rap from media sometimes. There's lots of richness here. There was lots of richness in the housing project where I lived. The problem is the concentration of poverty, putting all the poor people in one place and somehow expecting them to thrive. It's tough. It's very tough, and so many strengths are undermined when the concentration of poverty is so great. But there are huge resources in the core city, and I hope that the Hawken program will really create many rich exchange opportunities for students to develop a broader perspective and to develop the kind of social fluidity that I had to develop to go out there, way up the hill, the Magic Mountain, I like to call it, to Hawkins School.